Hey guys, Teiwaz here, back with another game review. Today we're checking out one of my all-time favorite genres, the real-time strategy. Total War Thrones of Britannia takes place in 878 AD when the great English kings and lords battled the scourge of the Viking invaders. Let's jump right in here and check this out. Thrones of Britannia is the latest installment of the Total War series and takes place in an incredibly turbulent time in history. 878 AD, King Alfred the Great is held off the invading Norsemen. Though the Vikings had lost at the Battle of Edington, they refused to surrender and admit defeat. Instead of turning tail and returning to their homeland, they've decided to stay and settle across the British Isles. At the start of the game, you'll get to choose which kingdom you would like to start as. There are 5 kingdoms to choose from: English, Welsh, Gaelic, the Great Viking Army, and the Viking Sea Kings. Each of these kingdoms has 2 different leaders to choose from. Similar to other Total War games, each leader has a different bonus to help their faction rise to glory and capture all of the British Isles. If you're totally unfamiliar with the Total War series of games, they're a really interesting mix of game mechanics. Similar to Sid Meier's Civilizations, you have a lot of city building and managing. However, the political aspects of Total War are a lot more intricate in my opinion. From military alliances to arranged marriages to declarations of war, this game offers a lot of different options in the diplomatic menu. Along with managing your cities, the Total War series of game has amazing real-time battles where you control your units of soldiers against other armies on the battle map. Building your armies requires a bit of strategy though, as there's a cooldown for each type of unit, meaning you can only recruit minimal amounts of units each turn. Unlike other Total War games where you had to wait a certain amount of turns for units to be created at full health, this game has decided to take a different route. All of your units are created instantly, however their initial starting numbers are quite low. This better helps to represent the slow building up of armies rather than them just appearing after a certain amount of turns. You can build up a full 20 unit army in a relatively small amount of time, but it will still take a few turns to replenish their health and get them to full fighting strength. Along with city management and real-time battles, Total War offers up an exciting turn-based campaign with tons of random events to either help or hinder your people. Political assassinations, marriage proposals, public unrest, revolutionaries, and even the wrath of the gods themselves will keep you on your toes. The map itself isn't one of the biggest that Total War has came out with, but it is the most detailed. The campaign map is translated to the battles that take place on them, and unlike in Warhammer where I found myself raising plenty of extra armies in order to overpower my enemies with numbers and just auto-fight most of the battles, in Thrones of Britannia I found myself looking forward to the battles. In the previous Total War, Warhammer 2, the siege battles were pretty repetitive, and once you figured out the units that worked best for you, it didn't take much of an effort to capture a city. In Thrones, however, siege battles are much more intricate. With multiple gates to approach and the ability to have ships landing on shores with reinforcements on the coastal cities, the siege fights are incredibly fun and addictive. Thrones focuses less on diversity of units like Warhammer 2 did and focuses more on quality. Each faction has their archers, skirmishers, sword, axe, spear, and cavalry units. Some factions have better archers, where others have better sword or axe units. Each faction has specific bonuses, so be sure to select the faction that best suits your playstyle. Like I just mentioned, the siege battles were one of my favorite parts of this game. From flaming arrows raining down on the towers to sword units using ladders to climb over the walls, and even the catapults tearing through the walls and gates makes for one chaotic, incredibly fun time. The AI seems a bit smarter this time around during the siege battles and actually move around as if being commanded by a general. In Warhammer 2, I noticed a lot of the times that the AI during the siege battles would pretty much just hunker down wherever they were spawned until they were killed. In Thrones, however, the AI seems to move to where they are needed the most. I've noticed a few times that when I'd rush my cavalry units through the gates for a charge and immediately spear units would start to move towards the center to try and defend. I really like the increased difficulty from the AI during these siege battles. With the AI, increased attack area, and limitation on how many units you can recruit per turn, each fight seems more important than in previous Total War titles. An interesting change-up from the previous titles are the minor settlements. No longer having garrisons or walls, they are much harder to defend. Any attack is now a much greater threat. From rebellions to the Viking invasions, any minor settlement without a standing army is easily occupied. The fact that minor settlements don't have much in the way of defenses can be used to your advantage though. If you start walking through enemy territory occupying all their minor settlements before sacking the city, the AI usually doesn't have enough time to react to that sort of an invasion, and you can manage to wipe out a pretty large section of the territory before they've managed to mount any sort of a counterattack. While the AI seems better in the siege battles, it doesn't look to be any different from previous titles on the campaign map. What I mean by that is, they don't really seem to foresee or try to prevent an impending attack. If you line up a few armies on their borders and we're at war, the AI doesn't seem to take that as a threatening gesture and does nothing about it until the attack has occurred, so you can get pretty well set up to attack without the AI preparing or moving soldiers to that area. Another change that has been implemented into this Total War that wasn't really in Warhammer 2 is the fact that units now require food for upkeep. Instead of only costing currency like before, now you have to feed your soldiers as well, kinda like the Skaven. If you recruit too many units and your provinces aren't producing enough food, your people will starve, leading to low public order. If your public order falls too low, it will result in a rebellion against you. These rebellions, unlike previous titles, are much more threatening without any garrisons in your minor settlements. I've had a few occasions where there's been a rebellion that has sprung up behind me and taken one of my most important food-producing settlements, setting off a chain reaction of starvation, public disorder, and rebellions. Something which was easily countered in Warhammer 2 with raising an army really quickly wherever the rebellion has sprung up is now a force to be reckoned with. These rebellions can easily take a minor settlement, recruit new units, and continue right along to your next minor settlement, growing in strength along the way. By the time you've made your way to the source of the rebellion, you could have lost half your kingdom, and if you're playing on a harder difficulty and are at war at the same time, you might actually lose the game because of one of these rebellions. Public order affects if these rebellions spring up, but there is another cause to these rebellions: loyalty. The loyalty mechanic is much more aggressive in Thrones of Britannia than previous titles. The governors and generals all have a loyalty meter. If you lose their loyalty completely and it drops to 0, they will defect and incite a civil war, leading to rebellions within your kingdom. I personally found the loyalty system a bit intrusive, and I spent entirely too much money and skill points on loyalty in order to ensure my people would not defect. On top of loyalty, there's influence, another stat to keep your eye on. If your subjects have more influence than your king, their loyalty will also start to waver. Ensuring your king is influential enough is key to ensuring loyalty. Sometimes traitors are just traitors, and no matter what you do, you cannot secure their loyalty. These people have to be dealt with swiftly and harshly. Torture, and in some cases execution, is required in order to keep your kingdom free of traitorous subordinates that are aiming for nothing lower than the crown on your head. As a whole, I really enjoy the Total War series of games, and this one is no exception. The more complex siege battles, thought-out composition of armies, and even the art style was a welcome change from the massive hordes of undead and elves that I encountered in Warhammer 2. If you're into turn-based strategy games, the time period where Vikings clashed with the great kings of Britannia, or just battles on a grand scale, Total War Thrones of Britannia is absolutely worth looking into. So, that's a quick look at Total War Thrones of Britannia. If you guys found this video interesting or helpful, please click that little thumbs up button. It really helps me out a ton. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later!